The issue of public transport is really, really important, but you can always see the benefits of when it works and when it's there. One of the statistics I always bring up is again my own home county in South Yorkshire. 1 in 5 people will turn down a job, so they've applied for it, gone for the interviews, actually been offered the job, then turn it down. 1 in 5 people. That's a lot of people turning down a job because they cannot travel to that job, either because they do not have their own transport or because public transport just doesn't get them there either in time or is sufficient enough to be good enough to be able to access that continuously that job. It's insane when you think about it, but public transport massively important. Buses, yes, I really do like that. We've talked about it before, but I think we need to talk about it even more about the fact that the Labour regional mayors are bringing back buses into public ownership. So you're just seeing very recently on the B network, the night buses are now launching in Manchester. Probably for the first time in a long time, a long, long time, that Manchester has had night buses. And those are incredibly important, again, for helping facilitate, nighttime economy. That will be help massively on it. And of course, shift workers who, happen to work those odd hours when, the buses aren't running, so then they don't have to constantly rely on taxis. They've got a cheaper alternative. So very, very good. But it's not just, of course, as we've said before, buses, trams, etc. Trains. You cannot escape the fact that the best, greenest public transport is trains. Getting people, mass movement of people, of trains, with trains, best way to do it. And I really have said this, and I cannot stress this enough. We need HS2. We absolutely need HS2. It is one of the things that we desperately need. It has to be built. You look at all the experts in the rail industry, even experts that are not even in the UK, and even they were like, we can't understand why Sunak axed HS2 when it would be such a massive benefit for the UK. You look at local experts here in the UK, and they said you can't escape not building it. You're only creating chaos for the future by not building it. And we've now got Labour in power. We now need to sort of really put pressure on this. We know this pressure has been put on Starmer to the point where he's now turned around and gone, well, actually, we need to look at maybe bringing back HS2. So we'll see what happens. But remember, this is a ticking time bomb. Very, very much so a ticking time bomb, as we'll see in a moment. So as always, before we do get into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, subscribe. Down below, there's the Patreon page, the one affiliation link called Buy Me Coffee, the YouTube thank you button, the Pony Club, etc. All that down below. Don't forget to smash the like button. And of course, as always, let's crack on into this. So this comes from The Independent with the title of Starmer has 10 years to replace HS2 or face a fight with Northern leaders. So ministers must come up with a replacement for the axe leg of HS2 and build it within the next 10 years or face chaos, Northern leaders have warned. This has been predicted for a long, long time that, by depriving transport up here in the north of this northern leg of HS2, it doesn't end up well. It creates huge bottlenecks and will result in a decade, if not more, of pure travel chaos. And we are running out of time, very, very much so. So, Labour has said it will not revive the high-speed rail section beyond Birmingham, but it will instead focus on trying to improve the east to west transport links in the north of England. Supporters, again, bear in mind, they've said, okay, we're going to improve north to east to west, which, bear in mind, does also need improving, because if you've never tried to travel east to west on the train in the UK, then you haven't really experienced travel chaos or the difficulties of actually trying to do that. It is incredibly hard to do it. So we do need more east to west lines. That is true, but we also need HS2 as well. So supporters of HS2 had hoped that at least the change in government would breathe fresh life now into the second phase of the rail link, which was then scrapped by Rishi Sunak last October. However, the government has confirmed in the King's speech in July, we are not going to reverse the decision to cancel the planned second phase of HS2. Northern leaders, including the mayors of Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, and Liverpool, met on Tuesday to try and work on a new strategy to try and lobby for the improvements they would want to see. A report provided to them by Transport for the North, which represents public and private sector voices, highlighted that a replacement for HS2 remains essential. You cannot escape it. I said it at the beginning of this video. You cannot escape it. You need to build HS2, and you need to commit to building HS2. Guess what? It'll cost a lot of money. It will probably come in over time. But guess what? Every single high-speed rail line has always been overcosted, taken longer to build than expected, but the economic benefits that it has provided or has provided in these countries well exceeds those downsides. Look at Japan with the Shinkansen, the best example. Germany, Italy, Spain. We always talk about Spain. They've literally just finished a massive high-speed rail link in their country. Overcosted, took longer to build than expected, but already has been showing that it will provide a lot of economic benefits to Spain. You know, it's just one of these things of, if you build it, the benefits it will provide over time far exceed any of the downsides. So let's continue on to this. So the West Coast Main Line is, of course, the busiest now mixed-use railway in Europe, carrying over a myriad of different intercity, regional, local, and freight, and it is as a heritage service now each day. HS2 was originally designed to try and release the capacity on that route by trying to safeguard the intercity services and addressing several key issue bottlenecks on that route. With the cancellation of HS2, alternative interventions will now be required. By 2034, the HS2 services will be operating between London and Birmingham, and that will be using the existing West Coast Main Line to take passengers then on to Manchester and northwest Scotland. And this is what is so done by cancelling this, because HS2 did not benefit like Birmingham below. What HS2 benefits is Birmingham and above. You know, by not continuing to build HS2 and go beyond Birmingham, you are creating this massive bottleneck now if you want to go north from Birmingham. Once again, you cannot escape it. You literally cannot escape doing it. It's just, you have to build it, you know? You cannot get out of it. This will, of course, now be using up the capacity on the West Coast Main Line, and these are now very limited options in which to increase it as to try and maintain the current levels of non-HS2 services, the report says. Andy Burnham has now been trying to work on a private sector-led alternative to HS2 so that Northern leaders need to really rally around the 2034 deadline. He said, this will very much hurt us all. If HS2 starts running trains to the north of England without any changes to the West Coast Main Line, that will just be chaos. The window to try and start putting in improvements is a decade away. Therefore, we've got to start trying to do this and having the planning now. I think that we've got to try and confront the government and the Department for Transport with the date to really start working back from it, because I just see chaos if we do not respond to it. Mark Tugwell, the chief executive of Transport for the North, also agreed, saying that 10 years in terms of major pieces of infrastructure is no time at all by the time that you work through and understand what is going to have to be done. And he's right. 10 years for these big infrastructure projects, 10 years, a long time for everyone else, not for these big infrastructure projects. That is a blink of an eye for some of these things. The TNF report said that the current state of play also highlighted that by 2038, HS2 would be starting coupling its 200 200-meter trains together to try and boost capacity. However, the West Coast main line is not equipped to accommodate the 400-meter trains, and the changes will need to be to junctions, stations, and even to facilitate the running of those longer trains. At some stations, the level of intervention required is expected to be substantial. So again, you cannot get out of this. You cannot get out of not doing this, because otherwise, if you haven't built it by then, you are just going to be in absolute travel chaos. This is real long-term planning here. We're going to have to see now what pressure, because we now know that the northern leaders are going to be putting pressure on the government. You have to do this. Transport for the North is like, hey, you can't escape this either. If you don't, it's going to be absolutely pure travel chaos within the next 10 years, because you're going to have all those passengers, those high-speed trains. When they get to Birmingham, what they were expecting was, of course, another high-speed line that they would be able to continue on. They're not. They're continuing on the old traditional line, which sort of eliminates the high-speed part of them. you know, um, like I say, you are going to create now a massive, massive bottleneck north of Birmingham. So in the future, if you ever do want to travel north of Birmingham by 2038 and nothing has been done, good luck. Good luck. So the eye revealed just last month that our HS2 trains will now be too high for even some for platforms, requiring now a complete redesign that will cost taxpayers around 200 million. The State of Play report also concluded that time pressures necessary now to urge the decision on which interventions should need to be delivered, with the key constraints that exist along the corridor. The Department of Transport said, transport is, of course, an essential part of this government's mission to rebuild Britain. We are continuing to commit to the rail connections across the north to support the growth that the country needs. And again, you want to do that? You want to improve transport? You want to improve growth? You want to improve everything there that you said? Build HS2. It's not rocket science. It is literally not rocket science. We need to build HS2. You can't get out of it. You cannot get out of it. You need to build it. There is no secret second way around this. You need that HS2 line, because the capacity on the current lines is just not there. HS2 was there to remove those high speed rail lines onto the HS2 track, which would relieve a ton of capacity on those. And until we come to that, then we really, really need to really be hurrying, especially all leaders, get them on building this, because it's not just things like HS2. There should be like HS3, HS4, HS5 all over the UK. And that would be a big government investment. That would really increase growth. That would really massively help the UK's economy. Why aren't they doing it? You need to do this. And here's the thing, they could absolutely borrow to do this. I do not think the banks would have a negative perception of doing this. We will not see the markets, I think, react very negatively, because we are building big infrastructure that will sort of reciprocate a lot of growth in the future. So we could borrow it. But again, as I've said, there are other ways you could help fund this as well, multiple other ways. But again, the government has to sort of look into it, and again, has to start thinking quickly, because 10 years to get this done, not a lot of time. Not a lot of time at all. So, as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.